Good morning, Michelle.
Good morning.
So as you reflect back on your lesson, how do you feel it went?
So I'm thinking about the different parts from the before reading when we did the Mysteries of Harris Burdick. I feel they were definitely interested in looking at a black and white picture, that they had to find the clues based on the title and the caption. So I felt that they were able to connect background knowledge as well as use the clues to help them. So I think it also built their confidence. And then during the reading, when I was reading one-on-one with each of them, I was proud of how Jack was using the text clues and even stopping during his reading for clues that really stood out for him. So I was proud of him for using those text clues and connecting his background knowledge. And Kaylee's also starting to understand more about the character in her story, as well as working through the vocabulary in context. So I think overall they're definitely making improvements with guidance.
How are you able to tell that Kaylee's making that progress with the character and the vocabulary?
So as she was reading, I also had her use sticky notes to jot down the most important part of how the character was feeling at that time, as well as the event. So I think based on her body language and her responses, she's showing me that she's understanding more with prompting.
Is she starting to think out loud?
I think she is definitely starting to use some metacognitive strategies, but that's definitely an area that, now that you mentioned it, I would like to continue probing more. I think that I've modeled it, but it's not transferring independently. So I think that as they continue to improve in the area of inferencing, I also want them to be able to improve in metacognitive.
Okay, so what I hear you saying, to summarize it up a bit, you'd like to continue with metacognitive strategies because you can see that they're understanding them a bit with your modeling now. You'd like to keep going. Do you plan to continue to use, because I know you had also said they were really interested in Harris Burdick. What are your plans from here? Do you plan on pushing them forward, or are you going to keep using Harris Burdick, or
so
how will that look?
That's a great question. So knowing that it's an interest for them, I would like to continue using that as a before reading. However, I also want to make sure that I'm giving them more time to read in their text independently as well as one-on-one. So I don't want to do the Mysteries of Harris Burdick for every lesson, but maybe every other or once a week, just to have them look forward to it, to build that excitement and confidence, but also provide more time during the lesson. So I think that's what I want to make sure I'm giving them enough time to read independently, to read silently, but also reading one-on-one. So I want to make sure I'm not doing too much before reading.
And you had mentioned time to read silently. How do you feel they're both doing with that skill?
I feel...
Is there a way you're able to tell, or...
Yes, and that's a great question. I do feel that Kaylee is doing a better job reading silently. I notice her taking notes. I told her to write down anything that she's confused with or that she doesn't understand. Whereas with Jack, I've noticed the need for redirection often when he is reading silently. So I think I'm going to have to try a different approach with him when he's reading silently. Maybe something more structured of exactly what I'm looking for. Maybe after you read this page, I want you to write down, so that helps him stay on track and keep focus. Because I think having him just read silently while I'm reading one-on-one with Kaylee, he tends to lose focus. I'll look over and he has the book turned or he's looking around. So he's definitely showing me those off-task behaviors. But I think if I give him something specifically that I want him to look for, that will help him in his independent silent reading. Because I know that he's interested in the text. He loves the sinking of the Titanic. He's expressed that to me often.
I was going to ask you how you knew.
Yes. So he definitely is very interested, and he was even able to tell me the structure of the I Survive series.
Okay.
How it starts off. It starts off with the disaster, and then it goes back in time, leading up to the events of that date. So he definitely is on the right track in terms of understanding the structure of the story, as well as expressing that interest and being able to make connections. But I think to work on his independence of silent reading, I want to make sure he has something he needs to focus on specifically.
Okay, so to clarify, you know because he has expressed it that he is interested in this particular text, and you just plan on giving him more specific expectations or something specific to look for.
So I already have them use the sticky notes during their reading, but I'm going to say to Jack, after page 5, I want you to tell me what new vocabulary word we've been working on that you read in the text, or I want you to tell me what was the most important idea from this page. So giving him something more targeted, I think will definitely help him keep that focus on his reading.
Have you, by any chance, just out of curiosity, have you worked with recall at all?
That is a great question. I think very briefly, when I say at the when the end I have them write down what wowed them from the story, what was interesting, and then the next day when I check in with them, I'll say, okay, now tell me about what you were reading yesterday. But I think that I could do that more often as I'm going between one-on-one reading. When I switch, instead of having them continue where they're reading, I could say, okay, now tell me what you read so far. So I could make sure I'm doing that each time instead of waiting until the next day. I could do it throughout.
Okay. And speaking of Jack, while we were just talking about him, I know you had said you were very proud of him and his progress during this lesson. And looking at the data that I've collected for you, how did you feel he did this lesson compared to your previous lessons?
That's a great question. So from my previous lessons, I felt that I really couldn't get much out of him in terms of how he could connect to the text at all. Whereas when we were reading about the gunshot, I didn't have to prompt him. I didn't have to say, okay, let's go back. He immediately said, a gunshot? Like, that captured him. And then we talked about using those clues and what he knows about a gunshot and why would a gunshot go off on the text. So he was able to make that connection easier than in previous lessons where it was very much guided of trying to pull from any type of background knowledge, let alone identify those clues. So I felt that his level of independence was showing more so.
Do you feel he knew he was making an inference?
I don't think he made that connection. I think he was so excited and surprised at the same time. And that's what I wanted to tell him. Like, you did that. You just made an inference. And he smiled. Like, oh, I did. So I was definitely proud of him, how that came more naturally to him. And maybe I need to stress that as well, that inferencing can come more naturally, that as you're reading, something can stand out for you and you start to think. You use those metacognitive strategies and making that connection. So definitely highlighting those moments where they are making those inferences.
Okay. So was this data helpful for you? Was there anything I could have
absolutely. It was very
done differently,
clear, concise. It allowed me to see the difference between Kaylee and Jack, as well as the text that was used. So it definitely helps me to think moving forward where I would like to go with my instruction.
Okay. And you had said your direction will be more towards
metacognitive.
Okay.
I definitely want to focus on more metacognitive strategies.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Did you need any?
No, thank you. Thank you for everything that you collected. I appreciate it.
Okay.
All right, thank you.